So Aaron Rodgers is trying to turn the New York Jets into a Happy Madison production. You know what I'm talking about? When Adam Sandler makes a movie, he has all his buddies in it, which is actually kind of a cool thing because that gives his friends work. It employs a lot of people. You know, you think about everybody from the key grip to the associate producer, like all these people are working because of him. Aaron Rodgers is approaching his football team building much in the same way. He only wants to go to the New York Jets as long as Alan Lazard's there, which makes sense. The guy had 60 receptions, about 800 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. But then he's like Mercedes Lewis, Randall, like Garrett Wilson is a member of the New York Jets. Like, I don't think, no, you don't need, no, they got Breece Hall. Like, you're good. You're good, Aaron. You know, for all this talk, for all the years about Aaron Rodgers, they never got him any weapons. Like, did he want any? Like, he sort of comes off like the neighbor. You're like, do you ever buy your kids toys? Like, no, like they only play with the box or they'll play with grass, like whatever. Why? But maybe that's what Aaron Rodgers has been all along. He just wanted his friends there the whole time, even got rid of Devontae Adams. But in any event, whenever you're listening to this, if you're watching live, he's certainly not a member of the New York Jets yet. He's actually going to be on the Pat McAfee show, and he's going to do his own version of The Decision. And if he's not wearing a burgundy checkered shirt, I don't know what we're doing here. But in any event, I do know what we're doing here right now. So, Sammy, let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Tuesday night. You know what that means. It is time for Take It to the Rank. A huge day on Monday. Not so much today. It's kind of like the opening days of March Madness. You go out to Las Vegas. You spend Thursday morning in the Excalibur Sportsbook, drinking your weight in alcohol. And then on the next day, you're like, I can't even move. That felt like the Bears today on Tuesday. But breaking it down for us, we will be joined right now by the incredibly talented Carmen Vitali. Carmen,
hi.
How are you? You're apprehensive. I don't want you to be. You don't need to be scared. I know the producers scared you walking in here, but everything's fine. How are you?
No, it wasn't the producers that scared me. It was your tone of voice being like, no, I'm not going to say anything. But like, you've got nothing to say to me, really, because I had a glowing report of what the Chicago Bears did yesterday. And I have voiced my annoyance at the whole Aaron Rodgers situation. So in a rare moment of me not being super objective, I think we agree on absolutely everything. It was a glowing report card I wrote for Ryan Poles yesterday.
Oh my gosh. Do you think they're going to win at least 5 games now? Is that too much? Are you still like not going that?
Okay, I said that before too. I said very close to 500 is what my prediction was, and I still maintain that. I said they might start slow, but I think they're going to end up around 500. And honestly, the moves that Ryan is making, it seems like they are turning the clocks forward on this, to borrow a phrase from what we just did this weekend, on this rebuild. And I think it's going to be a lot quicker than we think. I still think it's a couple-year process, but I think the Bears are going to be in a lot better situation next year than anyone really had expectations for, at least me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I understand all of that. What's funny right now is I feel like there's a lot of reporter Mad Libs going on. And this is the God's honest truth. Like, if the Bears had kept Roquan Smith, and this is like taking out that they would have ended up with the first pick, notwithstanding. If they would have kept Roquan Smith and given him $100 million, every pundit who's ripping them right now would be like, why are you giving that much money to one player when you need more players and you need draft capital and you need this and you need that? And so that's exactly what the Bears had done. And now it's like, well, why didn't they just pay Roquan Smith? It's like, what do you want from us? What would you want? What did you make of the moves that they made? I was impressed. I know that your report is on foxsports.com, but tell the folks, like, what did you think?
Yeah, it was interesting that they didn't address the needs that we thought they were going to right away, right? You still have a need at tackle on the offensive line.
Yeah.
You still need interior defensive line help. And there was rumors that they went after Mike McGlinchey for tackle help, but then they ended up with Nate Davis, which I think is a sneaky good signing because I think he had a lot to do with Derrick Henry's success in Tennessee, which is great. But the two linebackers, I mean, we spent all this time, and myself included, talking about how the Bears need a 3-tech to make that defense go. They also need a weak side linebacker. And now you've got I don't even know who they're going to choose. I'm assuming Tremaine Edmonds is probably going to be on that weak side, but I don't know for sure because you've got TJ Edwards too. You got TJ Edwards at really good value. But then, yes, Tremaine Edmonds is the same caliber of linebacker as Roquan Smith is. You did have to pay him a lot of money, but you still paid him less than you would have had to pay Roquan. And because of the way you finessed the moves and because of the chess pieces that you're moving around and because Ryan Poles is thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead, he also got more draft capital out of the deal. He paid and still got a linebacker that is going to make that defense go. And I can't say enough about how well Ryan Poles has done, how patient he's been, and just about how much he's thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, to the point where the fact that they did sign a guard instead of a tackle, I was kind of like, okay, how's this going to work? I don't know, but I completely trust it. Okay, you clearly have a plan. And that's what we've seen this offseason. I think that that's the biggest thing for Bears fans.
Yeah, I want to get into the Nate Davis thing for a moment, but going back to the linebacker situation, and a lot of people have talked about this, and I think that you put this in your article, but you went Tremaine Edmonds.
I know no one's going to mess that up.
It's going to be so many
mess that up so many times.
So many weeks to get that correct. Edwards, a 2nd-round pick for Roquan. To me, that feels like a pretty fair trade for equally the amount of money, and you get Jack Sanborn for the same amount of money. I don't know who turns that trade down other than haters trying to get clout by ripping on the Bears.
I think, too, we can't underestimate the value that TJ Edwards has because you got him at a good price with not a lot of guaranteed money. This was Philadelphia's defensive signal caller last year. He wore the green dot. And yes, the Philadelphia Eagles didn't win the Super Bowl, but they got there, and it was in large part thanks to that defense. And especially TJ Edwards, he's a hometown kid. He's got such a good story, coming up from, I think he was an undrafted free agent, and then becoming a leader on the defense in Philadelphia, which is a tough place to play, man. And that defense, there was a lot of expectations on that defense, especially as Jalen Hurts kind of came into his own. So I think that is incredible. I think that was really, really good value. I was totally fine with just TJ Edwards. And then you go and get Tremaine Edmonds, who hasn't had less than 100 tackle season since he got into the league. Like, it was a slam dunk, home run, whatever sports analogy you want to use. I'm so impressed with the plan that the Bears front office seems to have. Not to mention, this also indicates to me, like the draft did last year, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are on the same page. Ryan Poles knows what Matt Eberflus needs, and he is going to get it for him. And that cannot be understated. Those two sections of the football operations within a team, the coaching, the personnel side, those two working together should not be taken for granted. And it's awesome. So.
Yeah, it's great to see. And Edmonds is one of those players who I feel could have a little bit of a glow up coming into Chicago, really getting an opportunity to go out there and kind of, start a new chapter for himself. And especially with the way, that's another thing too, is like who fits the scheme. I think that Matt Eberflus has been around the NFL long enough to be like, this is my kind of player. This isn't my kind of player. And somebody can be really good. Like, it happens a lot with players who are really good. And you're like, this doesn't quite fit what we're trying to do here, what we're asking players to do. And I think that's fair. And so I think that this was a pretty good trade-off. I like Roquan Smith. I hope he does well in Baltimore. I hope he continues to kill it, but I'm not going to be upset with what the Bears have been able to pull out at the linebacker position. Now, you did mention the defensive line still has a lot of deficiencies. Draymond Jones is a player that I really liked and thought that was going to be a possibility. I'm shocked because Seattle is sitting in a spot where they could pick Jalen Carter. So for them to go out there and spend the money for Jones, which leads me to believe that number one, they might be looking at a quarterback, trading down or doing something like that. But did you get the sense that was because Greg Gabriel intimated this, but it felt like the Bears were interested, but they're like, we're not paying that price.
Yeah, I think that that's exactly what happened, especially because you still need a rotation up front too. So you need that 3 tech, but I don't know that. And again, you can't address every single need in one offseason, despite how many resources they have. You can't address every single need right off the bat. We don't know that they're not going to address it in the draft, though, too. It's kind of a weak defensive tackle class, unfortunately. You've got Jalen Carter, and then the drop-off is quite severe. And it did kind of make me second guess if Jalen Carter is perhaps still on the table, because he very much still could be there at 9 now.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case. And again, I think that the Bears would have a lot to atone for if they end up taking him.
Well, I thought he was going to Seattle. I honestly thought he was going to go to Seattle. That's why it was shocking to me that Seattle
could. Yeah, he still could. I mean, just because they invested that into Draymond Jones, I don't think that precludes them from still taking a guy like Jalen Carter to, again, you need a couple of those guys up front to really to eat up all the space they need to, while also, pass rushing the quarterback or getting pressure onto the quarterback. I also haven't ruled out Seattle wanting to get another quarterback to kind of sit behind Geno for a couple of years. We actually just did that in our mock draft on foxsports.com. I think they ended up with Anthony Richardson. Ooh. So yeah, who's kind of a more developmental guy. And it kind of made sense. At least the way, so David Hellman was the one that made that pick. I didn't make that pick, but I think that makes sense too. Just because you re-sign Geno, is he really your franchise quarterback, or are you going to go out and draft one either this year or next and let them sit while Geno finishes out his contract, and then you got your quarterback in the future? I don't know. Seattle's in a cool spot.
Yeah.
The Bears are also in a cool spot, because if 4 quarterbacks go like we had actually in our mock, that means you're only looking at 4 other non-quarterbacks off the board by the time you're picking at 9. Possibilities are endless, man. And everything from wide receiver to tackle to that's all in play. It's all in play for the Bears, and they're setting themselves up still very well.
It is one of those things that, in somewhat tongue in cheek, but it's essentially, to use the phrase that people use on us about, like, you essentially gave up a first-round pick for Chase Claypool. It's essentially a top 5 pick for the Chicago Bears, because I, like you, anticipate 4 quarterbacks going off the top of the board, which means like there's 5 guys who are the 5 best non-quarterbacks in the draft right now. And you're looking at Will Anderson, Carter, Bijan Robinson, maybe Skoronski, your boy,
Tyree Wilson.
Tyree Wilson. Like, the Bears are in a pretty good spot. I guess I'm jumping the gun here, but do you think right now, if, based on the moves that they've made, does it feel like they're committed to 9 and they're going to use it to address either, a pass rusher, an offensive tackle, or do you think that there's an opportunity for them to move down even further to kind of try to pick up some more draft picks?
That's a hard question, just because I think that Ryan Poles has the utmost confidence, and why wouldn't he, in his offensive line evaluation process, right? So do you need to use your first pick of the draft on an offensive tackle who, yes, is probably a sure thing, but if you're Ryan Poles, you can get a guy that maybe some other people have overlooked at a better value that's going to give you the impact you need without having to spend the capital on that. And then maybe you go for a guy like Tyree Wilson. Maybe you even go Jackson Smith and Jigba, because I think that to reunite him with Justin Fields, chef's kiss. And I don't care that you have DJ Moore. Like, you have DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, and you add Jackson Smith and Jigba to the top of that receiver room. That's one of the deepest, best receiver rooms that you're going to get in this league. So I really do think that they have a good mix of best player available / needs. Like, that's how they're kind of operating right now, is like, all right, where can we get the best value, maybe is a better way to put it,
right,
while addressing some needs. But I do think, as much as I want selfishly them to take Peter Skoronski with the number 9 pick,
right,
I don't know that that's going to be the case, because I think that Ryan Poles knows and has more confidence in his evaluation of offensive linemen where he knows he can hit later on. That's my point.
Yeah, when you nail a pick like Braxton Jones, I think that kind of gives you a little bit of confidence. And I said this, I guess this is the first time we've talked. So, oh gosh, this is the first time we've talked since the trade even.
Since the trade, yeah.
So I guess we can dive into that in a moment. But on the NFL Network, I was there on Friday. I mean, it was perfect. I mean, it could not have worked out better for me to be on the network on Total Access on Friday, the day that DJ Moore was traded to the Bears, especially with the producer that we have on Fridays, who is he's very much like not an over. He's like, he was like, we were going to have these segments called Chop It Up, where he's like, yeah, here's the thing. Like, you guys just go talk about the Cowboys. It wasn't overproduced, like whatever, go talk about it. And so then of course the trade happened and we were talking about this. One of the points that I made is exactly what you said. Like I do not even a little bit rule out the possibility of Jackson Smith-Njigba being the guy that the Bears take at number 9. I know there's a lot of our friend Brian Perez has been talking up Bijan Robinson. And I've seen, I think it was Emmanuel Acho who also said this too. And I understand where they're coming from. Like, hey, the Bears need playmakers, which is true. But it's almost like turning into fantasy football in a way, because when you take, let's say Jackson Smith-Njigba is good. Let's say that he is Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson or one of these guys. He is going to play 2 contracts with the Chicago Bears. I don't care who the running back is. I don't care how good he is. He's playing 1 contract for that team. The Bears are not in a position right now to go out there and take a 1 contract player. The LA Chargers, if they get rid of Austin Ekeler, you're in line to go take Bijan Robinson. The Chicago Bears, to me, and people can argue with this, I don't think that they're in that spot. I would rather take the wide receiver. And like you, I would rather have 4 studs. And if Claypool, and listen, it's insurance if Claypool doesn't work out. I still believe that he's going to, but if it doesn't, well, all right, we got this young stud out of Ohio State that I think is going to be very good.
Yeah, we also don't need all 4 of those guys to have 1,000-yard seasons.
That's true.
Like,
yeah,
Chase Claypool could put up 500-600 yards, throw in 5-6 touchdowns, and I'm happy. I'm very happy with that. So I think we're holding each of these guys to wide receiver 1 standards when they don't have to be if you have that deep of a room, if that makes sense. No. I also think, again, they could still retain David Montgomery, and I think Nate Davis was maybe a push for that as well. Him and Derrick Henry were super tight since Nate Davis came into the league. I was talking to some people in Tennessee, and they very much looked to Nate Davis for how much success Derrick Henry had. Derrick Henry was the leading rusher in Nate Davis's first 2 seasons with the Titans. Yeah. So he had a lot to do with that, especially last year. Derrick Henry rushed for over 1,500 yards with a piecemeal offensive line at that point. And Nate Davis was a huge reason why. And so I'm like, all right, he's a very good run blocker. I think that he could get better in pass pro, and that's a little concerning. But I also think that maybe this was kind of one of those things like, hey, look, David Montgomery, we're getting you some guys that you can legitimately run behind. And we have Khalil Herbert, and you have a quarterback that can be part of the run scheme too. So stay here and hang out and give Justin the benefit of a good run game to fall back on as he does try to get himself going in the pass game. That being said, there needs to be a lot more work on that offensive line to give him enough time. And that's the concerning thing. I think the trenches are still concerning to me, but that's because I pay a lot of attention to them. We'll see. And then this is a really good cornerback class though too. And I think that's another wild card you can throw in as a possibility at number 9.
Yeah, you're starting to sound like Freeland, where you're getting. Listen, there's still a long time to go.
Our friends. That's all I'm saying.
There's a lot of time to go, but let's talk about Nate Davis for a second. Obviously, during his NFL career, he's played right guard. Tevin Jenkins played right guard last season. Do you have any indication of where Ryan Poles going to tell us, or is this going to be a thing like we have to wait till August? I mean, I guess we'll see minicamp.
If last year was any indication, we're still going to see a lot of evaluation. It depends on how many new guys too, I feel like, end up on that line. Because one of my thoughts is Tevin Jenkins now, are they planning on upgrading the line to a level that now Tevin Jenkins isn't your surefire right guard starter? and he's going to have to prove that again. Is that the case? Or, and I saw this possibility floating around the internet of Kobe Whitehair moving back to center, which is a position he's played before, and then Nate Davis moving to left guard, and you leave Tevin Jenkins at right guard, and then you get a tackle or two in the draft to help with all of that. That could be the case too. But again, when it comes to stuff like that as well, I'm looking for more continuity this year than last, but I don't know how forthcoming they're going to be with how, I mean, even when media, although training camp, you get a little bit more access. But usually you don't really get to see who's practicing with the ones, or you're not allowed to say who's practicing with the ones. And so if it's the same guys every week, you're not going to be able to say that. And they're not going to tell you that until you see the team in its final form. But I'm hoping that they know exactly where these guys are going and where they're going to stay. And they're not going to play these musical chairs that they were playing last year, trying to figure out, which I don't think they will, because I think last year they were legitimately just trying to figure out what they had.
I feel too, like you don't sign a free agent without being like, here's where you're playing. Like Nate Davis is not going to come to Chicago with like, we'll figure it out when you get here. It's like, no. I need to know. Like there's certain things, there's certain places. Like if somebody's like, come to Vegas, I'm like, okay, you're fine. If you're sending me to Pullman, I need to know exactly where I'm going. I can't, it's just like, I feel like they've got an idea of what they're going to do, but you don't like when they switch, when they go from right to left. Or
I don't like that. I don't. It needs to be something though, where that person's either done it before or you give him ample time to get adjusted. And this would still give him ample time to get adjusted from switching. Cause I mean, at this point, someone's got to switch some position. Cause as in its current iteration, like I said, unless Tevin Jenkins is not your starter anymore, and which is still a possibility. I don't see exactly where Nate Davis slots in, but that's a great point. Unfortunately, like Chicago is a wonderful city. It's my favorite city in the whole wide world, but playing here is another story. And especially for a team that isn't expected to contend, to get Nate Davis to come here on a team friendly deal. I mean, it was good money, but it was still pretty team friendly. You are absolutely outlining exactly what you need him to do. And he is buying into that. So I'm with you. He knows the plan. I think Poles and them know the plan. Yeah. We'll see. We just don't know the plan.
By the way, you can find it on TikTok or any of the social media things. I did a thing of rebuilding the Bears, and it's funny, I had Deron Payne coming. That obviously didn't happen. I had us signing a guard though, and I moved Cody Whitehair to center. And a couple of people are like, oh, that's a guy. I never thought about that because Cody Whitehair has obviously played center previously. So this would be a pretty good opportunity. Now, you talked about McGlinchey a little bit ago. Was this a situation, again, where the Bears go into free agency? They're like, yeah, I'm in. And then the price goes way up and you're like, I'm not budging. I'm like, that's just way too much money. Is that what that's the sense that I got. Did you feel the same way?
I did. And the guaranteed money that McGlinchey got was what I think would have scared them off. Again, because obviously they guaranteed a lot of money to Tremaine Edmonds, but I just think that Ryan Poles has more faith in his offensive line evaluation process to the point where he is not going to spend that kind of money on a position that he knows so well that he can get value for in the draft for a much more team-friendly price. Yeah. And I think he wanted to add one or two veterans. I don't know if they're done adding veterans to the line because you need kind of tone setters, guys that have been there before, guys that can help younger players come in. But from a talent perspective, I don't think he's going to pay a ton of money, which is why I think we're also going to find out, granted, he's not signed anywhere right now, but Orlando Brown, we're going to very much, if Ryan Poles, who is so familiar with Orlando Brown, doesn't sign him, then that tells me he is not worth the money that he's asking.
That's what we said last week. Yeah.
Right. Like whatever happens with Orlando Brown, if Ryan Poles does or does not take him, that tells me everything.
100%.
So if he does take him, that means he is that good and he can get better. Even he hasn't hit his ceiling yet. He's worth that amount of money because he can turn into that player that you need him to be. Or if they don't sign him, it's nah, man, I get that you're coming off a Super Bowl. that's going to drive up your price. You're not worth that. You can't play to that level. I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, exactly how we put it last week, and it's starting to play out that way to the point of like, okay, and nobody else is biting either. So there's something going on. So for everybody, like I understand that we were so excited on day one, and for day two to be sort of a dud, everybody's like, well, you don't do something just for the sake of it. Like you just don't like, well, let's just throw away this money. I just think that, and by the way, the more and more I go into this, the more and more I get into Braxton Jones. And I was talking to Sean O'Hara Friday during our breaks at the NFL Network and everything like that. And he goes, listen, he's like, when you have a rookie whose biggest issue is like getting stronger, like that's the best problem to have. Like he knows what he's supposed to be doing. He knows where he's supposed to be. They showed off his athleticism. If he's just got to hit the weight room, then like hit the weight room, like get stronger. And like that's a fixable problem. And so a lot of guys, they still make the leap. So perhaps, Ryan Poles, he saw what he saw from Braxton Jones and is comfortable with there's a reason why he started at left tackle last year and they never budged. Never. So it is one of those things. So I think a lot of people are just going to have to deal with it. What about this? What about the notion? You see that Austin Ekeler is out there looking for a new deal. I was going through this because, like, anytime a fantasy relevant player comes out, you always go through the list of like, okay, let's see where he really fits. And you got to kind of take a lot of the AFC teams out because I don't see the Chargers being like, yeah, we'll just send you to Cincinnati or the Kansas City or anything like. And then you look at the NFC and you're starting to look at the teams like who realistically fits. Carolina is one that comes to mind. There's a couple others, but like Carolina and the Bears, like literally stand out. Do you think there's any chance that Austin Ekeler could be on the Bears wish list?
I mean, if he costs the same amount of money as David Montgomery and you feel like he fits the system better than David does, but I don't know that that's the case just because we've heard Ryan Poles time and time again voice his support and his desire to bring David Montgomery back. I just don't know. I think they're probably going to be relatively the same price. I think David Montgomery could be even cheaper than Austin Ekeler. And if that's the case, then I think you stick with, again, it's not bad to have a veteran in this offense that can kind of provide some sort of stability. And with all of this roster turnover, keeping some of these guys in place that have been here for a while, I think will help Justin Fields and will help the rest of the offense kind of keep that foundation intact and just learn from. I mean, David Montgomery is really great for that running back room in so many ways because he knows the system now really well, but it's also he's been in multiple systems. So I'm sure he has a ton of wisdom that he can impart on some of the younger players. And Austin Ekeler would be coming in from a different system, have that experience. And he's a wonderful player in his own right. He's so much fun, but I don't think that you back down from everything you previously said at this point about wanting to bring David Montgomery back and how well he fits into your system as it is.
100%. It's fun to think about in the guise of fantasy football. And by the way, for anybody who saw that on NFL Network today, you'll notice I did not say, because it would have implicated that David Montgomery is not coming back. And if you think I'm going to go on the national TV and say that David Montgomery is not coming back, you're not going to get that from me. Am I biased? Am I one-sided? Sometimes. But Austin Ekeler, wonderful player. Enjoy Carolina. How about some questions from the audience though? If we got by the way, Sammy, you can jump the line. Kerry Franklin, Adam, I love your enthusiasm for the Chicago Bears. What do you think of Jimmy Johnson's view of never taking an offensive lineman in the first round? You know, what's funny is he did a very nice job, Jimmy Johnson, of building his offensive line through the draft. Now, when he inherited the Dallas Cowboys, Nate Newton, Mark Tuinei were already on the roster, but Mark Stepnoski was a third-round pick, and that's, with the Bears having 2 second-round picks, I think 2 third-round picks. So we have 5 picks in the top 103. I think a center could be had there, and like Carmen's been saying, I do think that you can find value in the offensive line in the second, third, fourth rounds. I mean, Larry Allen famously was drafted in the second round by the Dallas Cowboys. So it really does make a lot of sense. And I do think that, as much as we love Paris Johnson and players like that, these guys are going to slip through the cracks. Remember, Tevin Jenkins, a couple of years ago in that draft, was slotted to go to the Bears at number 20. We have to get him in the second round, or we got him in the second round. Like, I think there's a scenario like that too. And with the sliding scales, I think it's probably best. I'm talking myself more and more into Jackson Smith and Jigba as the guy, and still want to go wide receiver, even though we have DJ Moore. And I could go along with that, even though I know Carmen, again, loves the Skoronski. Although he's a Packers fan. Did I hear that correctly today?
Oh, I don't know. Is he? He might be, but that's whatever. Who cares?
I'll tell you who cares. Me. I care. I will tell you this. Hold on for a second. Actually, I can find out because I saw it online today. Listen to me.
Don't you want to wouldn't it be so satisfying to convert someone though, and to force a Packer fan to play for the Bears and go all in on the Bears? He's not going to be a spy from the inside just because of his fandom growing up. Come on.
I know, but he is from the city where I was born, from Park Ridge, Illinois. And Stacey Dales was sitting there interviewing him. By the way, I was a little hurt that Stacey Dales didn't shout me out when she was talking about Park Ridge, Illinois, because she knows I was born in Park Ridge. And so that's the thing that hurts. You were born in Park Ridge, which is not Chicago. Okay.
No, but it's close.
To the people
it's an 847 area code, right?
I don't even know.
I'm pretty sure my grandma lived in Park Ridge for a while.
Well, it is now, but when I was born, it was still 312. So here's I always do this thing as well. It's to the people who are watching here. Okay, Park Ridge is not part of Chicago, but when I'm sitting here at the pizza joint, and so when I'm at Rip Beer Company, and people are like, "Where were you born?" You're like, "Chicago." There's somebody in this Park Ridge. You know what I'm saying? We know the suburbs.
You know the context. Yeah. I don't ever say I'm from Elmhurst. I say I'm from Chicago because outside of the city of Chicago. Someone asked me here in the city where I'm from. I say Elmhurst.
Of course.
But nobody knows where Elmhurst, Illinois is. Everyone knows where Chicago is. And I do live in Chicago now. So I can.
But we know. See, but I know. When we talk, I'm like, I know where that is. Yeah. Aurora. Aurora is famous because of the Wayne's World movies. But in any event, but I do like the idea. I'm with you. I mean, offensive linemen in the first round sometimes make a lot of sense, but I'm with you. I want to go get that playmaker. That's going to be I feel like that's going to be my official position. And if Sammy wants to make up a graphic and put it out, fine, I'll own it. That's fine with me. And I just hate the fact that, a lot of people will do the thing where they'll be like, well, how's he going to throw the ball if he's not? I'm like, I got it. It's the whole thing the Bengals went through where they could have taken Penny Sewell or Jamar Chase. Right. And Penny Sewell has turned out to be there
wasn't a wrong answer in that, but yeah, I think they're happy with Jamar Chase.
But who would you really have? Who would you rather have? I know Detroit, it's hard for Detroit too, because they've had the benefit of getting Amon-Ra St. Brown and really hitting it out of the park with him. So it's that's a little bit skewed, but ultimately give me the receiver. We'll figure it out. We'll get the ball out of Justin's hands quick. Give me the receiver.
Yeah, you got a point. Listen, I don't like saying you shouldn't ever get an offensive lineman in the first round. There are plenty of offensive linemen out there that were worth it. You look at my Northwestern Wildcats own Rashawn Slater. He was by far and away worth it. Penei Sewell was worth it. Quentin Nelson back, a few years ago was worth it. Those guys are worth it. But then you get, multi-contract starters who snap to the greatest quarterback of all time, and they were taken in the 4th round. Ryan Jensen was taken in the 4th round out of a small school. The Bucs very much built their offensive line through the late, day 2 and day 3 picks. Ali Marpet, Donovan Smith, they all came in the 2nd, 3rd rounds. Alex Kappa, all of that, and they all had multiple contracts. Alex Kappa is on his 2nd team. Donovan is still in the wind right now after being released by the Bucs. But yeah, so I do think that it's possible because offensive linemen in general too have a lot more of a transition to make when it comes from going from the college game to the pro game. The college game and the pro game for offensive linemen are completely different. Some of these guys have never been in a huddle before. And now they're expected to go into the league where that's all you got. And there's just so many different ways to play. I mean, I even remember having conversations with Braxton Jones last season about how much different it is up at this level, even like schematically or technique wise. I mean, we're talking about he's never really engaged defenders or been that aggressive because in college, that's just not what you do. Essentially, you're taught to sit back and they say pass pro isn't passive. It's not, but that's kind of how it's played in college. And then to come to the league where now you're the aggressor, you're the one engaging, you have to have your hand placement just right. You have to have, there's so much to offensive line play, and it gets me going, obviously, because I don't feel like a lot of people understand it. But when you do get a guy that is a technician that you can tell that he's going to have a seamless transition in the NFL, like a Peter Skoronski, like a Paris Johnson, then those guys are worth taking in the first round. But yes, the game is just very different. You're going to have to work with these guys. So taking a guy in the later round, being able to work with him, coach him up, all that other stuff, that makes a lot of sense too. But trust me when I say there are plenty of offensive linemen out there that are worth premium draft picks. And we've seen that over and over again. But it works out the other way too. So I get it.
No. And it's funny because it's very similar in fantasy football where everybody gets into these absolutes. Like, don't take your quarterback early. Wait, I'm going to do 0 RB. Like, don't take a running back. Don't do this. Like, and you always find examples of why that works out. Like, hey, like in fantasy, I didn't take a quarterback early and I ended up with Geno Smith and he was like, okay. But at the same time, it's like I ended up with Kenneth Walker or whomever, who I drafted in the 13th round. Like you can always find this exception to this rule. I think basically what you want is like, try to hit on your draft picks, no matter who they are, when you draft them, just try to hit on your draft picks and go after it like that. Do we have another question, Sammy? Sorry about that. I'm sorry. A producer for tomorrow is getting on me. Do you think we could get Orlando Brown at a 1-year prove it type deal? All the other free agent money has dried up. 1 year, $19 million. Yeah. Do you think they could get into a spot like do you think I still really like Braxton Jones, and I think that's where they're committed to go. But do you think there would ever be a point where they're like, the deal becomes so good that you can't pass up on Orlando Brown?
Yeah, if that happens. I don't foresee that happening with Orlando Brown. This is a guy that made 0 sacks t-shirts to wear to the Kansas City Chiefs championship parade. Like, I don't think that is going to be the case to the point where it would make sense for the Bears. I could be wrong. And maybe you do want to get a veteran in at left tackle and push Braxton Jones down the depth chart a little bit, let him really acclimate to the league, get him in a strength program this offseason and then into the season as well. And you don't need a veteran for that long. You just kind of need him as a placeholder. But to be a placeholder, I mean, you got to drive that price way down.
Yeah.
And I don't foresee that Orlando Brown, who can choose where he wants to go, taking a deal like that. But I mean, if it's available, sure. I don't think I'm paying 1 year, $19 million though for him. Not at this point.
What's the league minimum? If Orlando Brown walked up and said, I'll play for the league minimum,
that's
I think
not
the Bears would do. But it still comes down to, does the deal make sense? Like I have this bad habit. Like I can go into like a 99-cent store or something. Like whenever I see something for 99 cents, like it's very easy to convince myself, like I could totally use this. I don't need it. I legitimately
can rationalize any purchase when I shop. Believe me.
You could go even the rack, like, this jacket's marked down to $9. Like, but I've got 30 of them in my closet back here. I don't need one. And regardless, I understand that it's a great deal. I don't need to do it. And I think the great thing about Ryan Poles so far, what we've seen over the last, year or so, is that he doesn't get pushed into these situations where he's just going to spend to spend. And I know that the Bears walked into this whole deal with the most salary cap room of any team. and people expected them to spend all this money on McGlinchey and Orlando Brown and Draymond Jones and just spend the whole thing. But he realizes, like, we have this money can still roll over. Like, I know we have to hit a minimum, but he's still got to extend Jalen Johnson. At some point, we're going to have to start working out an extension for Justin Fields if he works out the way that we want him to. Darnell Mooney. Even like, what if Tevin Jenkins comes out and is an all-pro? Well, he's coming very close to the end of his contract. There is, like, you cannot spend everything right now. So I understand that it's frustrating, and I know Orlando Brown's a huge name, but I think we're okay. I think we'll be fine. I think again, we got to trust the process. Scott Pioli was on the NFL Network today talking about this very, very same thing about, like, Ryan Poles has shown that he really values picks. Like last year, going from 5 picks to 11 picks was significant, and that's with nothing to work with. Now he has something. He has a number 9 overall pick. Like, that could turn into a lot more. So don't rule that out as well. And, Ryan Poles isn't going anywhere. So he's like, I'm not going to have to rebuild everything in a day. So he's going to take his time and be very judicious moving forward. All right. How about another question? And I keep taking my glasses off for no reason. Hello, Adam. What do you think the next move for the Bears in free agency? You know what? I was kind of waiting around today, and James Bradbury came off the board for the Philadelphia Eagles at a pretty decent number for them. And it's a move that they needed to make. I'm starting to look at some of the cornerbacks who are still available and what they could possibly bring. I think that the next thing is going to be one of those moves that underwhelms people, whether it's Rocky Sin or somebody like that. But I think it's going to be a smaller deal like that. But I think it's going to be defensively, and I think it's going to provide some depth. What do you think the Bears are looking at over the next couple of days?
Yeah, you've got a really young secondary. And so getting a veteran corner into that rotation, I think would be good. But again, it's as a rotational piece. It's not getting your number 1 outside corner. Yeah. You're going to stick with your guys that you have right now, and especially with how well Kyler Gordon has done on the inside. But you definitely need another guy. But like I said, too, I touched on it before. It's a really good corner class coming out in the draft.
That's true.
So again, if you are going to, I think it's worth, again, investing in a veteran. I just think it's not going to be some world beater because you can get a really good corner in the draft, and you just need kind of that veteran presence in that back level. Again, the defensive tackle market is hard because it's not a great draft. I don't feel like it's good for rotational guys, but you really, really need a guy like Jalen Carter. And I don't know if that forces you into taking him regardless at maybe that number 9 pick. Because there's really nobody in the free agent market either. But if you are, you still could add to the rotation. Is my point on that too. I'm with you that it's going to be some sort of I don't want to call it underwhelming though, because those are very important pieces as far as having depth. I mean, you have the depth on the roster, and I really love the fact that they're building in front of their depth, and so that's kind of you build from the front of the depth chart. Yeah, but I don't necessarily see. I mean, hey, maybe the next piece is re-signing David Montgomery, which isn't underwhelming. It's exciting, but it's not bringing in a new person or anything like that. I could also see, I don't know. I mean, it's good tight end class too, because I feel like you could use another tight end.
Oh, this is a huge, this is
a really good tight end class.
And I think that's why guys like Hayden Hurst haven't been signed yet. Who's like Hayden Hurst, Austin Hooper, Mike Gesicki. I think a lot of teams are looking at this incoming tight end class, and they're passing on a lot of these guys. There is an opportunity to to sign one of these guys on a 1-year deal that we've seen become more and more popular. I don't know that I think we need to start looking a little bit more long-term for some players. And also at number 9, you're talking about the cornerback class. One of the players I really like coming out is Christian Gonzalez, who is a good player, who again, like that would be, I just know, like having to be on, the NFL Network and defending these moves, because anything that's not offensive tackle or a wide receiver is going to be poorly received by not only a lot of the fans, but by a lot of the people on the network who are be like, what are they doing? You're like, building a team. Like, I don't know. What do you want from me? But But it's just one of those things. All right. How about another question, Sammy? And again, I took off my glasses. You know what it is? I don't want the light to reflect off of it because I think it looks
I know.
crazy.
That's why I don't have my glasses on. I'm like halfway blind right now. So sorry, guys.
Kaleb McGary should have been a Bear, top 10 right tackle in the league for 11.5 mil. He's still like, did he sign?
Yeah, he re-signed with Atlanta. He re-signed with Atlanta. Yeah.
Okay.
There were talks with other teams, and Atlanta just kind of stayed persistent. And I mean, they went and made a few splashes yesterday as well. So I don't think it's necessarily hard for them to retain their free agents because of that, because you're not giving up and, making this a rebuilding year necessarily. I don't know. I mean, I liked the idea of Kaleb McGary coming, but again, as much as I love offensive line, I am not at all more equipped to evaluate these guys or think who would fit better in this system than the Bears, than Ryan Poles, than the offensive line coaches, all those guys. So I can't say anything else but to trust them in what their decisions have been. Because, yeah, they do have enough cap space for him. But, again, it could have just been as simple as he wanted to stay in Atlanta.
I mean, that happens sometimes. The guys just like their team. And by the way, I've said this a number of times on the NFL Network as well, is every time they talk about players coming into playing right tackle, I'm not 100% moving on from Larry BORUM. Like, I think that he's and this is the guy that I think could get pushed down for organizational depth as somebody comes in above him to start. But at the same time, like, we can't rule out the fact that some of our guys who got experience last year are going to make improvements. Like, there's leaps to be made for offensive linemen. And so again, I think what you're saying, Carmen, a lot of people really need to heed this of like, Ryan Poles probably feels really good about himself figuring out who can start on the offensive line. And you know what, if it's one of those things, like he looks at this class, he's at the combine, he's at the Senior Bowl, he's at all these places, and he's like, you know what, I know that I can find guys who are going to be just as good as McGary. The only reason we talk about him is because he was a free agent. It wasn't like we sit around and be like, God, I gotta tune into the Falcons today because McGary's playing. It's not one of those.
Tristan Wirfs. He's not Tristan Wirfs.
Right? Like, that's the whole thing.
Did.
But by the way, if you're enjoying the show tonight, we want to thank you for being here. Comment sick and hit the like button. Make sure you like and subscribe and all that good stuff if you're listening to us as a podcast. By the way, share it with your friends. We've seen a lot of people jumping in over the last couple of days of things have been happening. And just as a reminder, we'll be producing some more shorts as players continue to get signed, as moves continue to be made. Be sure to be subscribed to the Sick Podcast. Be sure to be subscribed to our YouTube channel. There's a lot of cool stuff that'll be coming down the pike over the next couple of days as the Bears continue to build out this roster. By the way, we're sitting here right in the middle of March, and I know the fantasy football season is over, but March Madness is upon us, and the best way to play March Madness and to do your pool is with Underdog Fantasy. That's right, and Underdog Fantasy is the easiest way to play fantasy sports at all. It's simple to get started. Just head to underdogfantasy.com or download the app, sign up with the promo code SICK, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. They also have PGA games, which are a lot of fun. If you have not tried that, if you're trying to listen, you're bored. Like we just had the Players Championship and we just came off the Arnold Palmer Classic. So the next couple of weeks with the PGA, not going to be great. We'll have match play in a couple of weeks. And of course, the Masters will be coming up in April. So if you've ever wanted to try PGA fantasy, you want to try. By the way, I am so good at PGA golf fantasy. Like you guys, I lost this week to my friend Graham Barfield because he took Victor Hovland over who was the guy that I picked who fell off? Did I have Max Homa? One of those things. It was one of those things like, it was so close. Max Homa. And Max Homa put the ball in the water on 17. Otherwise, I would have won. But that's a lot of fun. So golf fantasy, if you've never tried it, it is a lot of fun. With the Masters coming up, I implore you. The match play is going to be difficult to figure out. Skip that. Just do it for the Masters. Do a Masters pool. You won't regret it. Underdog Fantasy is the place to do your fantasy sports. All right, how about some more questions or comments or whatever we got? Hit the like. Yes, Cassie, we appreciate you. Have heard anything about Monty? Like, listen, we heard the same things you hear. Like, they seem to like him. They want to bring him aboard, but it's just a waiting game at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Poles was asked about him as recently as the combine, and I was there, and Ryan Poles said again that he has no update. I think I tweeted that out. I was like, we got nothing, guys. But his status on David Montgomery has not changed in that he wants him back, and he has not been shy about saying that. He's been very candid about saying how much he wants David Montgomery back. If that's the case, then I don't see it being too difficult to retain a guy like David Montgomery, especially with as many moves as the Bears had made. I mean, if you saw Instagram and Twitter yesterday, a lot of these guys were sounding off. A lot of the players were sounding off at the moves that Ryan Poles was making. I mean, Chase Claypool implored the city of Chicago to give Ryan Poles the key to the city. I mean, they are very excited about what Ryan Poles is doing and the team that he is building. So I foresee that David Montgomery, for as much as he loves Chicago, will also be excited about all of those things. And Ryan Poles has done enough already to say, hey, listen, we want you. We want you here. I even went out and got you another guard that's really good in run blocking, that you can really run behind. He was with Derrick Henry the last 3 seasons, or the last 4 seasons, 4 or 5. What else do you want, man? Like, I want you. Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's make a deal happen. Of course, with Saquon Barkley being tagged, Josh Jacobs being tagged. A lot of the big name running backs are off the board. You know, Derrick Henry presumably is available to trade. Austin Eckler's out there seeking a deal. I think David Montgomery's best bet is just to come back to Chicago. Hopefully both sides can get together to consummate a deal and move forward that way. Let me ask you, though, we didn't touch on Demarcus Walker. Not a lot of people know about him. What can you tell us about Demarcus Walker?
That came in after all. I was like, come on, guys. Like, we're still not done.
Right? Like, this needed to be jumped on top.
Out right after I summarized all the Bears moves.
What did you think of that one? Because I feel that he could play in a lot of different positions on that defensive line, including the interior. I thought that was kind of a low-key, sneaky move.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that it's hard to have all of that. It's hard to get a guy that can really be position flexible in a 4-3. But yes, I agree with you. His skill set is wide. He's a big variety of skills that he's good at. I'm not making sense right now. I liked the move, though, is the long and short of it. And I think that however you can get to the passer, you're going to need to get more creative. And we did see some interesting fronts out of the Bears defense. I only anticipate that getting more creative as this next season goes on, where you're shuffling guys from the outside lining up on the interior, putting those interior guys out just to confuse offensive lines. I mean, we were seeing this more and more with defenses in general because of how athletic offensive linemen are and how aggressive they can be. So now it's up to you to try and confuse them as much as possible. And with a guy like Demarcus Walker, you are going to be able to do a lot of interesting things. And I think we're going to see more creativity out of the Bears defensive line, quite honestly.
Yeah, and those are the kind of moves that I expect to see us making over the next couple of days. Not as much Orlando Brown, more Demarcus Walker kind of guys just filling in some spots. And, when you look at Eberflus's defenses over the years, they've really thrived on not having more than, it's not like superstars, all pros, household names. It's guys who are just really good football players. And I think that's going to be one of the hallmarks of the Bears defense moving forward. Do we have another question, though, Sammy? You think the Bears are a 500 team? Caesar wants, I think he's calling you out, Carmen. If I didn't know any better, I think he's calling you out.
I have been saying they're a 500 team next year or this coming season. I just wanted to temper your expectations because you were saying playoffs automatically. And I just don't think it's going to be that easy. Even, at 500, I think this division is going to be pretty competitive.
Oh,
competitive.
Come on.
So I just think that, but I think that 500 is good for this next season. And then, you really get the last couple of pieces in play in the 2024 draft, which you already have extra capital for.
Right.
Mind you.
Oh, Andy Dalton's on the case for us. He's going down to Carolina to sabotage from the inside. That's the move. He's still one of our operatives. I really believe that.
Sure.
Andy Dalton. I love, it sucks. I like Andy Dalton. I like him as a person. So that's always, I always hate making jokes about him because he's actually a very funny guy. He's like, got a great sense of humor. He's
self-aware.
Self-aware. Like, I think he would have the best, he would be having fun too. I hope that when he starts working, when he's one of my colleagues, eventually I'm going to have to be like, hey bro, they're just, I'd have that conversation with David Carr one time. Like, hey, they're just, he's like, I never took offense to it. He's like, it's funny to me. And then I will make a joke and people will be like, oh, I bet you wouldn't say that when David's here. And I'm like, watch me. I'll say it right in front of him. Like, I don't care.
That's my barometer for jokes, honestly, is like, if I would make that joke in front of them.
Would I say
most
that
of the time
in
I would.
front of them?
Yeah, would I say that in front of them? Or even criticisms too. Because I always want to make sure all my criticisms are fair, and I never will go after the person themselves, and I don't get personal either. So,
yeah, we don't. Outside of Aaron Rodgers, I don't attack anybody on a human level. No, I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. But listen, this has been a great session. Thanks so much for being here, Carmen. We do appreciate it. I know it's very busy this time of year. We got a lot of cool things happening, a lot of good things happening with the Bears. So again, as news breaks, we will break with you, but for sure we will be back next Tuesday to kind of talk about a lot of this stuff. I will. I have one more day on the NFL Network. Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We appreciate everybody. And by the way, like when we've dropped these special episodes, people have come along for the ride. And so we totally appreciate that. So we appreciate you being here. But again, if something crazy happens because tomorrow's my last day, not my last day, but like for the week till Monday, my week ends tomorrow, doing some fantasy hits on the free agency frenzy tomorrow morning. I'll be off Thursday, Friday from the network. I'm going to be out playing golf. But if something crazy happens, rest assured, I will be back to talk about it. I might be a little bit more buzzed than you would want me to be. But no, I'm just kidding. Not while I'm golfing. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on. So we'll be here. Stop it. I don't like it. I just like actually playing the sport. I'm a weirdo.
I just like being the beer cart girl, so and driving the golf carts around. That's me at every single like charity golf whatever. I'm just driving golf carts around, hanging out with people. That's all I'm doing. I'm not playing. I never play in those tournaments.
Everybody has their role, and as long as you know what your role is, like when we play scrambles like that, I'm the putter guy. Like I'm usually the guy. Like if there's one that like. Let me go. Like if there's a 6-footer, I'm like, let me knock this one in real quick. Boom. Everybody stay in the cart. Boom. Okay. I got it. And we walk off. But in any event, thanks everybody for being here. Don't forget to comment, sick, hit the like button. So until we see you next time, bear down, and Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by Underdog Fantasy.